is Nick Simons from BBC Scotland. He is head of education and social media.
A new online education.
Online, yeah. And here is David Brown from the EBU. Sorry, I'm very sorry. It's David Wood from the EBU.
Tuna.
And I even could read it there. It's Joe Reddington from RTE and TG4. And that was an easy one when I could look at the screen. Wow. Okay, I think it's better I give the word to you, Nick.
Okay. Can I have my screen on, please? So, it's a shame there are more of you here. I thought that last session was really, really fantastic, and I'm just so impressed with what the guys are doing elsewhere. One of the problems about working for the BBC is you quite often forget the big world that's out there, and Circum's just great for that. But I think the thing that I've really picked up from this thing is that I think as broadcasters we are a bit all like oil tankers, and oil tankers don't change direction very easily, and sometimes that's okay, and sometimes it's a bit more of a problem. Yeah, a friend sent me that on YouTube this morning. I thought that was pretty fantastic. So I'm going to talk a bit about BBC and archive and the BBC's archive strategy. It's not just an archive strategy, it's a content strategy. It's everything we do. Archive isn't just about the old stuff that's sitting in cupboards. We're creating archive all the time. In the time I've been away, thousands of hours of archive, new archive will have been created. So as we define this strategy, it's also about defining the remit of the BBC going forwards. But really importantly, and both in terms of commercial and public sector, it's about the access to our back catalogue of content. It's a hell of a big job. This is the first of many Doctor Who related slides. I don't know how far Doctor Who has spread across Europe, but if he hasn't yet, I urge you all to contact BBC Worldwide and buy it for your station, because it's a fantastic show. I'm a sci-fi geek. Everyone's at it. The traditional broadcasters around the room here, NRK, DR, everyone's publishing their archive, publishing their programs online, but also some of the non-traditional broadcasters like Hulu, which Marius mentioned in the last presentation, and Seesaw, which is a new multi-provider archive website in the BBC that's providing streamed videos from a plurality of broadcaster. It's not just broadcasters though, it's not just TV. Everyone is at it. Marius also mentioned Spotify. British Library are putting their archive of artifacts online. There's things like the British Census that's gone online, and there's the iPad. There's I think I can go just one slightly better. There's the iPad. What a fantastic piece of kit, with books and music and video and TV shows and internet. It's a whole new way of personalizing the consumption of media, and we need to be there. It's about making full use of what we have. For the BBC, it's a completely national thing. We've got 24 archives across the UK. I come from that one that's the furthest north. Although I think one of the ones down third lowest is actually called BBC North, which and so sometimes we call ourselves BBC even more north. And for us as well, it's more than just programs. It is an archive of the whole BBC, but I'll come back to that. So commercial, very quickly, this is sort of the job of BBC Worldwide, the BBC's commercial arm, who make money, which comes back to serve the license fee payer. They sell formats like Top Gear. They sell DVDs and books through their own store and through stores all over the world. And they also sell content on demand through channels like iTunes as well. There are some archive stations around the UK. Radio 7 is a BBC radio station that pretty much just plays archive content. But there's also a whole suite of commercial channels that are churning out archive content on telly. We make archive-based programs. Oh, I better get the... I'll just go back and... It's just a bit of sound. That oil tanker was a bit loud.
Dawn Tinsley, receptionist. What? Been this for ages, haven't you?
Yeah.
I'd say, at one time or another, every bloke in the office is woken up at the crack of dawn.
What? They were like, look, this is going to be this sort of mock documentary, so it has to be as real as it possibly can be, so that, you know, people are watching it, they're not going to really know whether you're acting or not.
Lucy Davis had played Maria Lucas in the celebrated 1995 version of Pride and Prejudice.
Have you asked her, Charlotte? Is she to come to Hunsford with us?
Lucy captured the hearts of Archer's listeners as sweet Hayley Jordan before repeating the trick as Dawn.
Here's another one.
Most of us can't get inside a food.
So we make a lot of programs using archive. I'm sure that's the same for all of you. The first one was your classic sort of compilation show taking you on a journey through archive. This is a show that we did in the education department in Scotland. We took a factual documentary and we recut it for the education audience. It was very education-y, but it wasn't formatted for that audience. Super, super cheap, really easy with some of the new technology we've got in Scotland, tapeless production. We can get hold of their programs on our desktops without the big documentary makers knowing about it. It's absolutely fantastic. Very cost effective. There's more than that. So online, this is the BBC's programme site, the automated site for all of our programmes. One page for everything we make. This is a really good documentary that we had on recently about the solar system with Professor Brian Cox, ex-pop star, who performed on stage when Labour came to power in 1997. One of the things you may be able to see, but you can't, are the clips. New policy for the BBC, creating the archive. Every single programme will have at least one clip published in the programme site, available forever, rights cleared. And that's about building our archive and publishing our archive as we go along. There's, of course, there's the iPlayers, more Doctor Who, but that's full programmes, but of course that's tied up with rights. It's not available outside of the UK, and the programmes disappear after 7 days of whether there's series stacking, after 7 days of the end of the series finishing. So it's a great service, but it does one thing, and it's not a permanent archive. That's what we're doing now. Looking back, this is Radio Times, more Doctor Who. This is our listings magazine, and it just goes to show that we don't really change all of that much. We're still putting Daleks on TV on Saturday nights. So one of the questions we're struggling with at the moment is, could we go back and publish one clip from every single programme we ever transmitted? Could we go back and publish a news story from every day? So there's a news story. This is good public service ideas. We've got a dedicated archive site, which are sort of curated collections of archives. It was the election last night, and so they recently published a collection of old election footage. This is of very little commercial value, but a great public service resource. More Doctor Who, there's an archive thing, but this is about documents. There's no Doctor Who clips on the Doctor Who collection. It's all about the documents, the memos that were sent to each other. Really, really terrifying. In the UK, every single email we send now could one day be published in something like this. So if I send an email to Anita next week saying, bloody hell, that conference was boring, it'd get published It wasn't boring, by the way. It was a great conference. This is another archive project that we're running for learning. We're trying to clear and publish every educational program we've ever made. Education is a naturally on-demand market. You know, teachers aren't going to crowd kids around waiting for the scheduled program to come on. They need the program when they want it. They've been recording programs legally for years in a cupboard. That's on demand for a pre-online era. So we're going better than that, and we're publishing new clips to this all the time, and taggable and available. Other archive, and something else from Scotland. This is our history site where we just published one piece of video for every significant historical event in Scotland, and did a really simple time-based navigation. Again, as a real public service thing. I think the next step, and where it really ties into what Marius was talking about earlier, is it's one thing us publishing the archive as a broadcaster, but I think the really next step with archive is what can audiences do with it. If we can publish stuff in the open formats, if we could maybe have a look at what NRK Beta are doing with BitTorrent and making their stuff available, I think that's really exciting. So we've got a public space. Can we make it permanent? Can we make it accessible? I haven't even touched on copyright because it's an absolute bloody nightmare. And that's pretty much all I'm going to say. If you want to email me or send me a tweet, that's my contact details. Thanks a lot.
But could it be that any of you had questions for Nick?
Oh,
about
I don't want
this?
to ask them.
No, you don't want to be asked about anything.
Sod interactivity.
No, rather not.
No, go on. Yeah.
Anyone?
Oh, keep going. BBC's a BBC.
This is an obsession that we have, and this is not relating to clips, but to programs. When does an archive become a repeat through the back door? Because, you know, we get criticised a lot for the BBC for repeats. And, you know, do people see this as us just getting more repeats in through the back door?
Hard one.
That is a hard one, because why do we repeat stuff on the schedules in the first place? Is it a cheap way of filling the schedules? But we don't have a schedule on the web, so we couldn't be accused of that by doing it on the web. But you would also argue that you repeat a program because it's of public interest and it's been paid for, so why not make it available again to people? I guess maybe the web gets around that. I don't know. It's a good question.
Anybody else?
Yes. How do you sort it out, the problem with the people who is on your images about the rights, you know, privacy and these questions? Because this is something that is, you know, put it on the table more and more, and this is always difficult. And you have, for example, some sound bites or some music. It generates rights, and then you have a problem.
It's an absolute nightmare. I think one of the you know, when I joined the BBC 5 years ago, I believed that the public owned the archive. I believe the licence fee payer owned the archive, and that's the, you know, they don't. You know, we own the tapes, we own the shelves that the tapes are stored on, but we don't own the copyright. And even with the simplest education clip that we've cleared, you having to retrospectively go through a rights agreement that was definitely designed for a previous world, and try and dig your way out of it. And sometimes it's really impossible. For new programs that we make, we've got new rights agreement, and we might make them differently. We might use different musicians. We might use different presenters, and we will need different framework agreements for actors, for talent, for musicians, if we're going to move forward. But I think we have to. You know, it's like I said yesterday, it's a new game, and we have to start playing that game in a new way. Looking back, someone else who works full time on the archive project said that they had been looking at some other countries where legislation had been changed to allow the retrospective publishing of archive material, placing the onus on the rights holder to claim the rights. I think that's happened in some other countries. It's happened in Norway. Has it happened in Norway, or I think it's somewhere in Scandinavia? A law has changed. Anyway, we're not there. We're not there yet. Nor could we influence that law being changed, because we are completely independent from the state.
Then maybe one more. I got.
Because there is not only the problem, you know.
Sorry, I can't.
There is not only the problem when you use it again on broadcast quality or you know, for television purpose, but you know, we all know that we have a new media and we have an internet, and then we don't have the rights. How do you deal? Because there is at this moment a European debate about a common directive on the area on the copyright on the digital world, but it's really something that is really very complicated to deal with. We have the same problem at the European Parliament, because of course we have the right to have the images from our archives from the plenaries and from what is going inside the Parliament, but when we go out we have that problem. Sometimes we have the rights only for use it for television, but not, for example, in the internet world, and this is really becoming a nightmare.
Yeah. We need to change our rights agreements.
Okay, then, you're next. Maybe you say a few words. You come from Ireland. I didn't say that in the beginning, but maybe you say a few words about what you actually do at... RTE. Yes.
Hi, my name is Joe Reddington, and I work for RTE's Irish Language News Service, based in Galway in the west of Ireland. And we produce the Irish language news for RTE and also for TG Ceathair, and for RTE on radio and on television, and we contribute also online. I want to offer the apologies of my colleague Maire Chonlain, who, due to volcanic ash, cannot be here to share her great knowledge of archive and archive programs, as Maire is a commissioning editor for TG Ceathair. I want to start with a story. TG Ceathair started broadcasting in 1996. It was a very analog and offline world at the time. And in order to get people to entice people to buy aerials to receive the new channel, a program was commissioned called All Ireland Gold. And it was a program really packaging old All Ireland finals. Now, we're a very sporting nation, as the French know, in Ireland, and we love our football. And we will one day forgive Thierry Henry for keeping us out of the World Cup, but not today. But we have our own football called Gaelic football, and we are passionate about it. And the All-Ireland finals had never been re-shown before. And this single programme meant that hundreds of thousands of homes actually went out and bought aerials to receive TG Ceathair, because it was showing something that they had never seen before. And it was a learning moment for both TG Ceathair and for RTE. And that is, if you have good archive and you use it well and repurpose it well, you get great audiences. On RTE, one of the most enduring popular programs is called Reeling in the Years. And it is a very similar format to a wonderful BBC program called The Rock and Roll Years, which the BBC did about maybe 2 decades ago, based on the 60s. Well, RTE did one on the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. And I've lost count of the amount of times that program has been repeated. And every time it's repeated, regardless of the decade, it gets audience shares of about 25, sometimes 30%. And it's done very simply, but the way the BBC did the original series. But it's a wonderful, nostalgia is easy. It's all in the past, it's all packaged, and if you do it well, you'll get the audiences. And I think that was another great learning curve for us as well. I want to show you a clip of a program, it's a program that Maire commissioned, and it's using what she calls personal archive. And this program couldn't have a simpler format. She talked to married couples, and asked them to go back to where they had spent their honeymoon and talk about their wedding and talk about their honeymoon. And using what she calls personal archive, in other words, old 8mm and old video and old photographs. And in a way, it's archive at a very, very personal level. So if you can roll TG4M, please. Yes, but slow. That's okay. We'll play a short clip and we'll stop it.
Mandela agus Rossiachta
take it easy in
agus
Ireland.
bhíon fad agus bhíon béla go bra sé húsáir agus an grína tanmh agus bhíon na caintena agus dunis me sé joke ná héige éine dúirt me cap me go me sé anmharú le rá. A funny thing happened to me on the way here.
Just to explain, that isn't the way it went out. That was emailed from Ireland this morning, and that's the problem. But you can see, you get the idea. It's personal archive, and they're very simple stories, and very well told, actually, in the series. The other clip I want to show you, and I hope this will work a bit better, it's, again, a very simple format. One of the things that TG Ceathair does extremely well is Irish traditional music. And they have done an English language and an Irish language version of the same program. The English language version goes out on RTE, and the Irish language one goes out on TG Ceathair. And it's called Come West Along the Road, or in Irish, Sheer and Boher. And it's old clips from programs in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And the interest is that you just get a clip of music, but you can see over a period of time how music styles have changed and how indeed some of the musicians and singers have changed as well. And this is TG4S. If it's painfully slow, we'll stop it, okay, but we'll have a look anyway.
Martin, tell me Jock Rail on show, Doug was born.
Foremost and an Irish reel called Colonel Rudd.
Don't yeah, beautiful.
If you feel like joining in there, lads.
You'll be sorry.
Give it Blackley. Here we go.
Now you can see why we banned smoking in pubs. People were having much too much fun, weren't they? That was from the very early 70s, and as you can see, it has lots of nostalgia. You can see how, well, for people who follow traditional music, there's been quite a significant change in the way music is played and music is presented, and that level of casualness that seems to have gone out of it now a fair bit. Nick mentioned earlier on the Maire archive online. TG Ceathair was the first broadcaster to put its schedule online for global, to be available globally, and RT was the second one to do so. And so you can go on to TG Ceathair online and look at our programs no matter where you are in the world, and you can do that for up to about, I think, about 5 weeks or so before it's taken off. And that's been taken into account in the contracts and the agreements we reach with program makers when we're signing the contracts on both channels. Maire asked me to mention a few little tips that she has for commissioners. She said, I don't know if you know this, but any movie trailers going back over the years have no copyright. So you can now, if this is wrong, I'm just telling you what Maire told me, okay? But you can use, apparently, you can use movie trailers in your programs free of charge and no problems with license. And the other thing she said is that stuff available in the Library of Congress is also free of charge, but there are charges, I think, for research. So just two little tips, she said. And the third thing was, remember that everybody has a personal archive, and that the program that we showed you, I think, is a good indication of what people have in their homes that can be made, that in the right context, can make from very interesting programming. So thanks very much for listening.
Are there anybody, is there anybody having points of view or questions for Joe? Yep.
Yes, I have a point of view. I like very much your approach, very personal approach of the archive. And I noticed, maybe I'm wrong, that the BBC is not strategy to with the archive to social media. Because, in my opinion, archive and social media could be linked very interesting in the way you did with the marriage. I have a personal idea. We in RTBF broadcast the news from 20 years ago. Every day, it's a short program, 20 minutes in the scheduling. And our idea, I noticed in the Facebook that there is some application to have the hit parade, the songs of the day of your birth. We have an idea to give the news of the day of your birth. It could be circulated in the Facebook and in the internet. It's a personal approach. It could be very interesting to link the audience to the archive.
Well, I think, yeah, I think that's a very good point. I don't think you're asking me a question. I think you're simply saying that is possible. As you were speaking there, I think in terms of social networking, but also in terms of YouTube, that YouTube is already a global archive for so many programs. Dave and myself were editing a program just before Christmas, and we needed to find the Irish entry in the Eurovision in 1965. And it's on YouTube. It's on YouTube, in fact, several times. I don't know what kind of person actually has that in their possession. I know RAI, who were hosting the Eurovision 1965, didn't have it. So we had to take it from YouTube, so don't tell them. But, I mean, it's out there, and pretty much anything you get that you need from highlights of programs are actually on YouTube. So already, if you like, the social networks and the personal broadcasters that YouTube, in fact, becomes are already ahead of the organizations themselves.
Time flies in good company. So, David, it's your turn now.
Okay. So there are two kind of archives issues, aren't there? There's the issue of all this making it available to the public, and then there's the archives that you have in your television and radio studios. I wonder if I could just ask you, how many people are associated with archives in the television studios, or know that you have archives or have used them or something like that? Archives in the production process. Would you like to put up your hand if you're familiar with that? Okay. So you might know that what we heard was two very examples of good companies, but in the world at large, actually the archive situation as far as storing these things by broadcasters is worse than desperate. There are tens of thousands of hours of material, audiovisual material, that really describes our history, which is simply going to vinegar throughout the world. I don't know if you're in one of those countries, but I've been to countries even in Western Europe, and you say, where's the archive? They say it's out the back in a shed. You go out there, you take the padlock off, and you get that smell of vinegar. You know what I mean? That means that it's all just going down the toilet, and the future generations of children will never be able to see the kinds of things that you saw to do with musicians, or the coronation of Queen Elizabeth, or whatever it is, Chancellor this or that. And it's a tragedy, and we're trying to help, of course. We have a group which comprises the EBU, UNESCO, and the UN, but it's painful. We're not really making much progress. If you want to find out about it, have a look at our website, which is called archivesatrisk.org. But I just wanted to say a few words, first of all, about the situation as far as archives in program production in studios are concerned, because this is the EBU, and what does the EBU do? We make surveys, you know? So of course we have a survey about that, and I thought you might like to say whether you thought what we found in the survey was true for yourself. So there we are, giving the programs back to the people. Yeah, of course, you know, when we talk about archives in television and radio studios, there are trends. You know, we needn't go into this in any details, but we say goodbye to videotapes, don't we? And we use other things instead. We integrate the archive in the production process. So when you make the program, you use electronic versions of the archives. Of course, this is all standard practice in the BBC and the RTE, but for a lot of people, it's not yet the case. And we use techniques of finding the bits we want, which are intelligent. And this is our goal, isn't it? Self-service archive access by the production staff. No engineers, please. This is what we're trying to do. And what happens to the archivists who've been there for 50 years? They have to do something else. You probably know this. They have to become controllers of the labeling, which has this word metadata. They have to become copyright experts, and usually they want more money. So this is pretty much what happens in our members. Now, in our survey, we asked people who were digitizing the archives, because this is what you do with the modern archives, and you need to digitize it if you're ever going to make it available on the web, of course. We asked them what did they find were the biggest headaches, the worst things. I wondered what you think they might be, and whether you agree. Yeah. This was the first one, that for EBU members, at least 40% of archives projects run over time, and at least a quarter of them are overspent. Now, I just wondered, is that what happened to you? When I was working years ago in the BBC, we always under-budgeted things because it increased the chances of getting approval by management. So perhaps that still happens in the archive world. This is one that people found. There is a reluctance to change. It's, you know, changing from the old tapes to something intangible on a computer disk or something like this. And maybe a surprise, is it a lack of interdepartmental cooperation on archives? Ever happened to you? No? Never? Good. Okay. Obviously, you're quite untypical. And this is another one that everybody finds, is that unfortunately, when you make the digital archives, you know, you kind of go out to some manufacturer, Sony or something, and you say, give me the stuff to make the digital archives. A couple of years later, he comes back and says, the format has changed. So equipment standards is ha-ha, because there aren't any that last any amount of time. And it's getting worse because the tape formats, you probably know, they used to last maybe 10 years. the life cycles of the information technology equipment is only 3 or 5 years. So this means that life is going to be a continual upgrading of your software. This is what it's about. What do you think? Is that your experience? And then we asked our members what decisions they had to make when they decided about archiving. How does this tie in with your experience? And one of them is to this question of, should I use the cloud? Who knows what the cloud is? Yes, everybody. Yes, it's basically about outsourcing. Do you store this stuff somewhere else or in your own premises? Do you put it in Southern California or whatever? And you have to answer these questions about whether you should, which is cheaper and so on. And if you're interested, about 30%, quite a high percentage of EBU members are moving towards outsourcing, using the cloud, if you like. And this is another question that they tell us that you have to ask is, you know, when you make a program, you get a lot of bits, don't you? And what is your retention strategy? Do you just keep the final program in your archive? Yeah. Or do you keep all the bits as well? Because sometimes it's interesting to know how the program was made, isn't it? Might be historically interesting in the future to keep some of those bits. So this is one of the questions that and generally they come down in favor of just keeping the final production, but there we are. And then there's sort of labeling schemes that you can use instead of the tape labels. And if you're interested in this sort of thing, then the most popular one is called the Dublin Core. I don't know what it has to do anything at all with Ireland, but I suppose it might. Anyway, either they use that or something they call our own system, which nobody else can understand. So these are the two types of metadata. And then again, what you do with rogue producers who say, I haven't got the staff to put the metadata in, you know, give me another 5 people and I'll do it. Do you tell them, do you provide the metadata or your program gets ditched? Or do you not do it as strong as that? And the rights, of course, this is a critical issue, a very critical issue. You need some kind of system, don't you, of knowing whether it's sort of green for go or red for stop. But it isn't easy because when the original contracts were done with much program material, internet and all this kind of thing didn't exist. And so if you get to a situation now where the people have passed away, what do you do? It's a difficult one. A lot of people say that it's interesting to take a phased approach, to start with the newsroom archive first. And this is a puzzling one for everybody. How on earth do you archive web content? Yeah? I mean, it's like an experience you have stepping through the pages. And so people are pretty bewildered at the moment about how to do that. And of course, there's all the technical stuff as well. And then these issues about how can I protect the program, you know, adding these signals on to do so. And then what about archives, high definition, 3D TV, and so on. So there's a lot of decisions to make.
David, sorry to break in, but I have to warn you, we are running out of time, so you try to sort of sum up.
Okay, so, well, this was going to be about the issue of delivering it to the home, but I guess we've already covered a lot of that, and the rise of the use of archives as a source for the public, and some things about that. When we get to the new world, actually there is, of course it's not for today, but there's a lot of interesting things about how search engines work in the television world and what ideas we could have to make them work better. So in conclusion, there is a real major problem throughout the world with archives deteriorating. But gradually all broadcasters are moving to digital, and there are common patterns of experience emerging. And the problems include getting the people to do it and the rapid evolution of technology. We are on the threshold of this age of broadband where you have high quality distribution, which we can make use of for our archives. And there's quite a lot of interesting things to say about how you search for audiovisual material in this environment. So with that, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, David. Any questions now at the end, or any other points of view that haven't been heard?
Just to, David said that, we're on the verge of broadband and high-speed delivery and all the rest of it. But I cut a documentary again before Christmas, another one with Joe, and any of the stuff we pulled down from British Pathé or Reuters or anything, that it all came down as digital delivery now. They've got good browsing engines, all the rest of it. So, I mean, we're probably already there, really.
That's yourself, but I'm not sure that it's generally true across Europe.
Was there another one? Yes.
Yes, I have a tricky question about the archive. I was facing this in several productions. When we do something about historical moments, the war, May 68, the 50th anniversary of Rome Treaty, you have the sentence, discourse, and it was filmed by 10 cameras, and you have the same image. And in the INA, it's very expensive. BBC is unaffordable, but in the European Parliament, you could have it for free. Or to recognize this question, because it's the same axis. They are like that. It's difficult to recognize what is the BBC, what is the European Parliament.
Well, if I might, a number of EBU members are moving forward with the so-called Creative Commons concept. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but essentially the idea is that there is a sort of pro forma rights agreement which says that people can use your content as long as they don't make money from it. If they make a penny from it, they've got to come back to you and get some, you've got to get some of it. So my personal feeling is that the future lies in this kind of Creative Commons agreement, and it would apply generally for all content that's available on the web.
Okay, I think we'll round it up then. Joe, Nick, do you have a gold comment at the end? Nothing at all? Just tired and worn out? Okay, thank you all for coming.